All right, so we are getting into essentially the essence of algebra is to solving for an unknown, solving for a variable. We're going to start with single step equations using addition and subtraction. Okay, we touched briefly on what inverse operations are. Just real quick, additive inverse we have, and we have a multiplicative inverse, which basically states we can add a number to any other number to get it to equal 0, and we can multiply a number or divide by itself to get 1. So those are the two, right here, those are the two main concepts that you really need to be familiar with trying to solve for a variable. So these are just a couple of examples of those additive inverses. We're going to just be talking about single step using addition subtraction to solve for a variable. So we know that 4 minus 4 equals 0. If I had, for example, a 5, I know that I could subtract 5 from it to get 0. Or if I have a negative 6, I can add a 6 to it to get 0. If I have a negative 3/4, I can add a 3/4 for it to get 0. So it doesn't matter if it's fractions. Fractions are our friends. They can be scary, I know, but the concept remains the same. The equal sign in an equation, because we've been simplifying expressions for a long time. Now we're going to add that equal sign and actually make an equation. I want you to think of that like a teeter-totter. So if I had a teeter-totter here, and let's just say this is our balance point. Let's say I added one box here. Well, what's going to happen? That teeter-totter is going to go down this way. So the only way that I could balance this out is to add a box here. So let's say this box is 5 and that is 5. Those are equal to each other, and we know that. But let's say I added another box over here. Maybe I added a box on this side, and I can call this box negative 6. What would I have to do on this side? I would have to bring a negative 6 over here as well, and that would keep that balanced. So what we are getting to, whatever operation you do, and in this case we're going to be dealing with inverse operations, whatever I do on one side of the equal sign, I have to do on the other side of the equal sign to remain balanced. All right, so if I go back into this, into our problem, so I have x minus 5 equals 27. What this is basically saying is what unknown number, and I'm going to figure that out, when I subtract 5 from it, gives me a total of 27. Now you may be able to do this in your head, but we're going to show our work using inverse operations. All right, so I look at this and I have two terms on the left side and I have one term on this side. I have a term of a positive x and I have a term of a negative 5. Now, our goal, as stated earlier, is to get the variable term by itself. And we're going to make that coefficient a positive 1, which will be later down the road as we get into other types of operations. But in this case, since I have the variable term here, I need to get rid of this negative 5 from this side of the equation. So how do I do that? I add 5 to each side. So when I look at this, I'm going to first decide which side do I start on the equation. I'm going to start the side that has a term, and I'm going to get rid of this term, which is the negative 5, right? So I'm solving for that. So how do I do that? I add 5. Negative 5 plus 5 equals 0. So on this side, I have just an x. And I'm going to line up my equations as I go down. Now, going back to our teeter-totter example, if I add 5 to this side, I have to add 5 to this side. So now I have on this side of the equation 27 plus 5. That is going to get me 32. So that is my answer on how I would solve that. Can you check your answer? Of course you can. We put 32 and substituted in for x. 32 minus 5 gives us, you guessed it, 27. So that checks out for that number and that unknown of what I would need to put in for my answer. All right, so here's another example. So I have a 3 over 4 plus x equals 2. So what number added to 3/4 will give us the equal 2? Well, it's the exact same concept. I could just subtract 3/4 from this side. Because if I do, what happens? I get this x term alone by itself. But I have to do the exact same thing on this side. So I have 2, then minus 3/4. Now, We encourage calculator use in this class, so I'm going to go ahead and bring up a calculator and we're going to type it in. We're going to find out what our answer is. All right, I need to bring up my calculator. I have to do 2 and then minus 3/4. So I am going to go to my online calculator here using decimals. So 2 minus, and then I have to put in that fraction. Scary fractions. 3/4. And you just divide on this particular calculator to get it. And what do I get? I get 1.25 or 5/4. So if I go back to my problem, I get 5/4. Or again, if you wanted to use it as a decimal, we know that we can go back here and call it 1.25. All right, so we have some practice problems here, and again, these are all single step equations of where we would start. If you want to, if this makes sense to you, go ahead and pause and try these problems on your own. But I'm going to go ahead and run through them here. So again, I have an x, take away 3 equals -8. What number will make this true? Start on the side that has the variable. I will add 3, do that inverse operation to both sides. -3 plus 3 is 0, so I just have x on this side. And I have a -8 plus 3. Use your calculator if you need to. 8765. That would be a -5 for my answer. -5. If I substitute it back in, -3 gives me -8. All right, over here, we got the variable term on the right side. So we got to get that portion by itself. We have to get rid of the 7. So I'll do that by subtracting 7 from both sides. So on the right side, I have a g. I have my equals. And now some students will want to put the g on this side out of habit. I like to keep it on the same side until further notice. If it mathematically has to go to the other side, that will do that. But just try to keep it in a streamline as we're going. So I have 11 minus 7 gives us 4. 4 plus 7 gives us 11. So we know that that checks out. All right. On this one, this is similar to our example up here. So I'm going to start on the right side because the variable term of the y is here. And I have a -3/4. How do I do the inverse operation? I have to do the opposite of -3/4, which would be to add 3/4. And if I add 3/4 to that side, I have to add 3/4 to the other side of the equation to keep it balanced. So on the right side of the equation, I have my y, because -3/4 plus 3/4 is 0. It goes away. And then I have to do 4 plus 3/4 here. Why don't we bring up our calculator and we type it in there. 4 plus 3/4. And that gives us 4.75 or 19/4. Either would be acceptable answer. What did I say that was? 19/4. There we go. All right, so for the last problem, again, it's on the right side here, and they could be on the left or the right. So I have a -6 plus w. I have to get rid of this -6, and I'm going to do that by adding 6 to both sides. I have 6 equals w for my answer. All right, use your calculators, do the math. Pretty straightforward. We're always doing the opposite, but just remember, you could start on either the left or the right side. Start on the side that has that variable term.